Reporting chair.
Good morning, councillors, officers and viewers. Thank you for attending this morning and giving your time up. This scrutiny committee is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible. A Welsh translation is available upon request. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from councillors Linton and James.
Thank you. Have we any declarations of interest other than we all pay the council tax? No? Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 and 4. Are you content that a regional record of the meeting?
Can I ask a question? Of course. It was about item number 4, the first bullet point. At that meeting, it said the strategic director to provide a written report on the. It's what we were discussing at the time. There was monitoring data related to education, and we were told we could get reports on that. Well, I certainly not have that yet.
Is that on you?
It was an action on me. You were going to get a written thank you for reminding me. I did speak to the head of education. You were having a written response about why some of that data wasn't available. That was the discussion.
Well, I don't think, I've been through the recording of the meeting, and basically we were told this data was available. It had been used to make a judgment in relation to equity, the issue we're talking about, because it was the strategic policy plan. And the data did exist, and my understanding was that we would want to see some of it.
I'll double check the recording. For I thought the conversation we were having about there are specific difficulties with obtaining data based on those equality, broken down in that way for equalities, and it wasn't available. Welsh Government does not make it available.
No, I didn't want the Welsh Government. I wanted our data. I mean, for example, if I remember it not that I took it to that position, but it did actually focus on exclusions. There was a reference in exclusions, and so I mean, obviously the authority's got data on how many children have been excluded and what ethnic background they're from. Full stop. I mean, but anyway,
just for clarity, Samantha, can you check the recording, please, and find out exactly what was asked? Okay. We're looking for accuracy. Councillor Harris has moved, and we'll take members arising up to that. Seconded as a reasonable. Yeah, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Right. So matters arising and taken up for Councillor Top.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't record that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And under item 5, we're still waiting for the scrutiny advisor to tell us about sister authorities, and that again appears later in your report. So it's nothing. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I will speak to the admin about that one today and see if there's any updates for the committee.
Okay, thank you. Right. All content now with the minutes? Okay. Good. Moving on to the budget and medium-term financial projections. I was asked to have a look at the draft budget proposals, show if we want to make any comments, and acknowledge the comments made by the other sister committees of ours. Well, what are you presenting on this?
I did very, very brief, and I'll hand over to Tracy. So obviously we do this on an annual basis, going through the budget setting process. So individual scrutiny committees look at the proposals as it relates to those committees. hopefully the Scrutiny Management Committee then, your role is looking at the process, the budget setting process and the consultation engagement process, and an acknowledgement, and I think we talked about this in G's briefing, an acknowledgement of the responses from the other committees around it. So Myron's here to talk through the process of it, and then Tracy will talk through engagement and consultation.
Did you say the cabinet member for engagement and consultations?
Cabinet member, do you wish
Morning, morning, Councillor Hurrine.
do you wish to say something on this before we start?
No, not at all. I'll leave it with Reece and Tracy. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And the officers are commended this year for the brevity of the report. You know, usually there are pages and pages of this, but I think you've done very well to get it down to so few pages. That's just to remind members, if they do want additional information, obviously they can ask for it. Whether or not it can be provided for you in time to influence these budget proposals is unlikely, but certainly it's your right to have as much information as you want, but we welcome the brevity of this report.
Thanks, Chair. So as we said, this is one of the consultation events for the budget, and the minutes of this meeting will go to Cabinet in their meeting in early February. So the process that we have followed is pretty similar to previous years in terms of the core issues. Obviously, we've had a couple of events last year which affected and process a bit, but at its core, we've followed a very similar journey, which is essentially is that we do have a 3-year medium-term financial plan. Obviously, the first year being next year's budget. So we begin our work in early summer. We review and update the latest version of that budget. We move it on the year, of course, because it's a rolling three-year plan. And the first thing we do is we kind of update what's already there, and we update our key assumptions where we can. At that point, we look at inflationary issues for any updated information or intelligence that we know about. We speak to service areas to look at budget investments that are already there or budget savings that are already there. We just take a look at what's there. Does anything needs to be updated due to any external issues that we're aware of from many sources. At that point also, we are at the point of closing the previous year's accounts. We're obviously starting getting into the month 4, 5, and 6 of the current year as well. And actually, we are identifying any significant issues resulting from sort of those that also needs to be incorporated into our thinking on the budget as well. That then leads us in kind of early autumn to a position where we think we need to be working on in terms of a budget gap. It usually is a budget gap, unfortunately, and there then follows a process of service areas identifying savings to that service gap. No targets were set this year. It was a general call out for what can services do, what are the opportunities, and from there, officers had two, maybe three, certainly 2 separate challenge sessions where they're reviewed by the executive team, PR, comms, colleagues, etc. are there, so that we can just make sure that all the angles are covered in those budget savings. So we have a couple of sessions there, and then from there we've got a medium-term plan then and a position. And obviously we carry on updating for any information and intelligence that we receive throughout this process, be it from Welsh Government or nationally. Now, obviously, the big thing, and that's at its core, is pretty similar as to how we carry out our budget process. Obviously, last year we had the national election. That was, a pivotal moment, as it were. And but of course, at the point of the government's changing, we don't know much. So therefore, the first UK budget was a major event that really had a big impact on what I keep saying to you about. We keep up to date on issues, and obviously the taxation increases that then went into the public sector was a major event there. So we didn't actually update our Welsh Government's grant projections as early as we do normally, because actually all this was happening, and it had the potential to change. So we had to wait until there was more firm signals as to what the impact of that would be. That obviously came later after the UK election. So whilst we got our settlements in very late December, I think that we were becoming very much aware by middle end of November that there was going to be significant increases in public sector funding, but obviously we didn't know, but there was plenty of signals out there, and then we kind of waited until we had the settlement only about a week or so before Christmas to go to the cabinet to agree their draft budget. Now we were later than we are normally on that, because we wanted to wait until that settlement was known with a bit more certainty, because it was clear to us that there was going to be a change, and therefore we took the opportunity to wait so that we had a position that was that was clear, and it just confirmed to us that the savings that we had were going to be sufficient to deal with next year's budget challenge, alongside that increased funding. So that kind of, that probably affected our timing issues. It obviously affected Welsh governments, because we got our draft settlements a week before Christmas. So whilst they have been late over the last 3 years, that's significantly later than it normally is. And this year we'll be expecting final settlements. Officially at the moment it's the 25th of February, but I heard yesterday that it could be a few days earlier. But that would be helpful, because at the moment both Cabinet and Council are setting council tax and the budget before the final settlements are known. However, it's never ever been a problem. That's because we work closely with Welsh governments, and there's nothing that changes anything. So that, clearly that was the big event last year. It affected timing, it affected the intelligence and the gathering that we do as the year progresses. One more thing to mention, a little similar to this year's budget, we've obviously got a significant amount of additional funding for the national insurance for our own staff that won't be confirmed to us until sometime in the year. So therefore, we've obviously budgeted planning for the national insurance increases. Funding for that, we're also building into the budgets to be received at some point in financial year. Exactly the same as the TT's pension issue that we had this year. That obviously introduces a degree of risk. You don't know if you're going to get everything or a lower amount, but that's that can be helped at this point. So that issue is going to be within the process. That issue is unhelpful, but it's outside of our control. Okay, that's it. Yeah.
And we'll come back to Ms. McKay afterwards to look at the process. So questions on finance. Councillor Harris.
Yes, as the funding you say was, formulation of the funding was contained by the budget. Was the national insurance increase, monies came from the national government to help the authority with the payment of the national insurance increase?
Like I said, they confirmed to us that when they receive funding from the Treasury, it will be distributed to the fleet across Wales. But that will be happening. They don't know what that value is yet. So that will be confirmed as soon as they know. But it will be sometime within the 25-6 financial year. So that there's a promise that the money is going to be forthcoming, but only when they know what that is and when they receive it.
What resources they have to give back.
Yeah, which is,
Oh, so we're still waiting.
we will be until the spring, maybe the summer. So we did the same with the teachers' pensions this year, and actually that was confirmed until October. So you're kind of waiting to see if it's going to be a problem, also or not.
It doesn't help planning, does it?
No, it doesn't. But there's nothing that we can do about it, unfortunately. So at the moment, we have an expectation built into the budget that we'll be receiving those funds in full.
Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I mean, I thought it was sort of pretty much guaranteed, because if it's not pretty much guaranteed, that could put us in an awful position if I suddenly turned around in the summer and said, actually, no, we'll give you most of it, but we're not going to do all of it.
Well, I mean, there's no guarantee that we're going to get all of this, and then certainly, the Scottish government told the public sector there that they'll plan to find it themselves. It's a bit different here in Wales, where most governments have said, when we get the money, when we know what that is, we will distribute it accordingly. I think there is a reasonable risk at this point that it may not be enough.
I mean, that's mortifying, because I assumed from all the conversations that was guaranteed. You should be talking potentially millions of pounds.
So most governments won't know themselves until the Treasury confirm it.
Sorry, Chair.
No,
I'm just going to special, but if the figure didn't match, what you're planning and you're hoping for,
Well, that would be
what would be the impact of that then?
Yeah.
In other words, where have the money come from?
no, it's very simple. We will build into our budgets an expectation of 4.1 million or so of funding from governments at some point in the year. If we don't get 4.1 million, then we've got an in-year overspend effectively, and we will need to rectify that in the budget next year by adjusting the budget. So it puts us a problem in here, and it gives us a problem. It gives us a challenge for the following
So you
year's
want to try and
budget as well.
rectify during the
Yeah, it's a bit like we did with the teachers' pensions this year. Our financial management will make the assumption that we will be receiving it in full, and then when we get to know, then we will adjust it as needed. Hopefully, we won't need to, but
We'll get extra.
so we never know. So we just don't know. That's the risk, but it's outside of our control, and it's not something that we're able to absorb in our budget, but because it's a large figure, so that expectation is built in.
On that point, Mr. Rushworth, if we could look at page 17, revenue support grant, RSG, that doesn't seem to quite convey that sentiment that you've just given us, that it looks as though the revenue support grant is fairly stable. There's no mention of the
So the national insurance funding is going to be a separate additional grants funding.
So
Not the RSG, it will be on top of additional.
can we find that in the report then, please?
The report does say that there's an outstanding risk around national insurance. And certainly the cabinet reports in February will be saying the same, and also the council reports as well. I could try and find it for you.
No, if you assure us that
Yeah.
it will be drawn to the cabinet's attention, that's fine.
Yeah, and I've already drafted the reports for the February cabinet, and I've even got an early draft for the council one. It's sitting there. It's sitting there.
Just to confirm, Chair, it's on page 16 of that. It's point 2 under the UK autumn budget item. So 2.2 and then II 2, I think.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned again after the third table, the inflation cost suppression table.
Okay. Further questions? Yes.
In terms of the savings that have been made, which were up 4 point something, 4.3, there's an element that's going out to public consultation, but the bulk of that saving is been delivered in declarations of the powers by various sections of the council. I'm just interested. I mean, how is I was interested in, that's probably quite a big question. I don't expect a breakdown of the whole thing, but just in general terms, what sort of things have happened to be able for the council to be able to save that sort of amount of money, which is around £4 million.
Yeah.
And is that going to have any impact on services?
So generally, the proposals that we consulted on are probably the ones that have the potential to have an impact on services, and they are quite minor. The single proposals to be done under delegated authority, efficiency, little impact. The reason why there's a big emphasis on those this year is because actually the savings that we had to find by historical standards are quite small. And that's because of the settlements, or partly due to the settlements being higher than we all expected. So that means that the savings is just for that million. If we look back, it's 2008. We were making 8 to 12 million pound savings every year. Having to find 8 to 12 million pound savings a year. As an organisation, I think that we're struggling to get near those levels now after many years of kind of doing these things. And the proposals in front of the council are predominantly those zero small impact proposals that we've got.
I mentioned, for example, related to reduction of staff.
There's a number of them, but again, the numbers are very low. But again, just by historical standards, so it's a reasonably small number. It is a. I wouldn't want to downplay any budget saving, and not all of the budget savings are zero impact, and I don't want to underplay them as well. But generally, this budget this year, because of the funding increases, has made it, one where the savings are made difference to maybe previous years. Not all of them, but generally by historical standards, a fairly small number of issues.
Mr. Cornwall wanted to come in on this, but the details are on page 22. Item 4 of the staff reductions and the savings. Sorry, Mr. Cornwall.
Yeah, I just think that it's important. These it's important to recognise really that what we do is an assessment of the impact of those proposals. So actually things might be in the scheme of delegation for a head of service to make the decision. That doesn't necessarily wouldn't consult on it, because actually if that is a service impact, then we would consult on it. Because we have to do that. So some of them are scheme of delegations, but essentially what you've got are a series of minor service redesigns or efficiencies within there. So technology to do things, changes in the way the services naturally have just changed, and therefore when we previously did things it's not relevant anymore, and actually there's a bit of budget realignment within some of these. I think it's also really important to know, whilst there are some post reductions in there, because of service demands, and Newport probably, whilst all local authorities have demand pressures, Newport's probably a bit different to others because of the population growth and the service demand growth as a result of that. Actually, we have got more staff. Our budget is going up. Whilst we've had to make savings, our budget has been going up because actually we've been dealing with this increasing, particularly around education, housing, social services. So I think it's important to note that. But the bit about consultation is that going to have an impact on service users? If it is, we will consult. That's important.
Yes, I just following on from the point about because there are very few actual real savings who go to consultation in there, like this relying on efficiency savings. That's what I'd like to call them in-house. One of the things I had welcomed from this was actually generation proposals for many years. So we could be done. It's a matter of the process on that, and allocating money to generate additional income. How convinced are you that we'll actually be able to generate wide income?
I think the challenge sessions that we carry out, first of all, is it's a wide of officers, including the exec board, are there, and colleagues from PR, legal, etc., finance, HR, supporting that, and that's the first kind of challenge session to go through them, and just making sure that it kind of makes sense. Secondly, for me, if there is some investments that's required to enable something to happen, which ultimately then generates a saving, we are currently able to sort of fund that, and therefore it's not being done without that investment where that is required. That is available. It can never be 100% guarantee, of course.
No. But I seem to recall we used to have our own pest control department. And I think we did many years ago. But it didn't make any money, and so down the road in his rent van or whatever's making a fortune. I'm thinking, hold on a minute.
There's sorry, just I suppose just down to a minor extent. So
or any other pest control company, I don't know if Denticus still goes with that.
These obviously we do look at other business opportunities. You've got to balance that against risk, because obviously we have to fund this, and we already have some local authorities across the bridge that have gone way too far on their risky side of sort of income generation. But there are income generation opportunities for us around some of the peripheries. You have to remember our overheads will be more expensive than the private sector, because in public sector body we've got terms and conditions of employment, etc. So you have to balance that. But essentially for each of those proposals, there is an investment either to generate income or make a saving. We go through an analysis of what's the risks associated with that, because essentially, and there are risks on both sides of that, either to make income or generate saving, that we might not achieve that with our investment. So we do go through quite a detailed process.
And
Content.
thank you. Anyone else? If I might, there's a cost of 777K for the closure of the landfill site.
Yep, so, so the landfill site is full. It therefore has to be closed for new business. And then obviously colleagues will then be remediating the kind of area. At the moment, there's a significant amount of income generated landfill site by people paying to use it. Obviously, now that we are full, that income source is going to stop. And therefore, that's the adjustment required in the council's budget for that income line stopping because the site is now full.
Strictly within your brief, perhaps you can't comment, but what's happening to this landfill waste?
Well, I mean, for a number of years now, most of the household waste is going to the waste treatment plants. It has been for a number of years.
I definitely will get a written response to it because there's nobody from environment actually, but my understanding is domestic waste hasn't got landfill site for a number of years. It's only commercial waste, and that's going to end.
Obviously, you can see where the thread is going. You know, if there's waste floating around the authority, it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, it has no impact. It's just
Which I did say it's slightly outside the.
Yeah.
Okay. You done on that? Thank you all. Nobody's indicating it's dialing in. Over to you, and came to talk to us about the process.
Thanks, Chair. And we've covered some of this, haven't we, in terms of we don't consult on all the proposals and try and identify through robust processes things that might impact on service provision and be that higher level in order for the public to be able to work through what we're consulting on. Quick reminder to us, so there was a two-phase consultation for the first time. The first one ran from the 14th of November to the 15th of December, and that was on two financial proposals. Phase two began on the 13th of January and is still running. So the Cabinet then have that's collated quite quickly, and Cabinet then have about a week to look at that ahead of that decision-making process. So the public engagement is primarily through the online survey. But paper copies of that are also available, and some of you may have seen that and requested those for ward meetings and so on. We've used our social media, so a combination of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm sure you've seen the One Newport bulletin, which goes to all of our partners, social housing partners, third sector partners, for them to cascade also. We've started to use and we've continued to develop use of the My Newport customer portal. So people who subscribe to the council for information now get the kind of request to reply direct. I think that was something the committee have talked about in previous years. We promote to schools to share with parents, and we use a wide variety of our networks, 50 plus forum, the youth council, the third sector networks, equalities networks, and so on. We talked a little bit today about staff, really important to talk about what we do with the unions. So we've got an employee partnership forum, which is the formal place where unions talk to us about savings proposals, and someone from finance, Myron, I think it was you, comes along and answers any questions they might have, and they'll submit a formal response. We also promote via our staff news. Again, we've referenced today the impact on staff, and the impact on staff of kind of savings across the board, even if there isn't a direct impact to them, you know, that kind of what that looks like, feels like to them. So managers supporting that. Hopefully you'll have seen that we've kind of pushed ward members a little bit more to share this, probably more than we have before, and provided some extra information to support with that. We run a survey on bus Wi-Fi because that's a free provision, particularly for those who might not have access in other ways, and that's particularly focused on council tax, but we also use that as a way of encouraging people to fill in the longer survey. And where there are specific proposals that affect a certain community or group, there are some face-to-face engagements with those groups. If there are any other engagements, so you'll be aware of an online petition, that if it's submitted in time, that will be considered. All of that will be collated in terms of the feedback to Cabinet. So that probably covers the process, leaving out the things we've already talked about. Any questions?
Just to sum it up, there's no significant changes from the ways the consultations were carried out last week. Is that fair to say? Or?
We pushed more on using some of the recommendations. We've pushed more on ward members. We've pushed more with schools. We've used the customer interaction more. So similar methods, but we've kind of tried to proliferate all of those methods and get engagement as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Questions on these?
Perhaps just a few comments. Initially, I couldn't find a link to get onto the survey, but I found the link onto the survey. I just wonder whether, and I've got the survey out, so apparently it looks like you do it more than once if you want to. I haven't got to the end. I've just gone back to look at some of the questions. So, for instance, review of community centres across the city. They said there'd be a saving of £25,000 by ending contribution payments to voluntary organisations. So you can say, do you want to make full saving, small saving? But what if we have to find other savings elsewhere, increase if we cancel tax, doesn't give any other options. So, for instance, are we saying, do you want to put council tax up, or have you got any suggestions of how you could find that £25,000? For instance, I think somewhere else in there was an additional £120,000 for the additional need for the Welsh language on top of pressures. Whether somehow you could formulate, because I think it was a figure of £120,000 staffing in the community centres, whether you could have a this or that type scenario. Would you increase council tax? Would you, or alternatives? Some alternatives? I know it's quite complicated to do that, but maybe it's and the other thing I was thinking of is looking, we've mentioned this many times about looking at not just best practice, also lots of good practice from other local authorities across the UK. And they got to consultation and do still some of them sort of walk into the city centre or something and with a clipboard and ask people questions when they're out and about during the day, or in the pub at night you might get a different scenario. So yeah, I mean ultimately I think we do a lot of useful consultation. Is there something else we could do perhaps? Because we still only get a small amount of people. I put it on the Altering Matters Facebook, which goes to about 6,500 people, a single person. I don't know. People will certainly complain about the council tax coming up. How difficult it is, unless it's a single issue. If you say we're going to close down Killeen, whatever, the amphitheatre in Killeen, budget saving, for instance, and you're obviously going to get people, but you're obviously going to get feeding from people about a specific issue. Do people care? Yeah, I do think that they care, but how many people out of a population of 160,000 people actually respond to the consultations? So I guess it's a question of how we can encourage people. Do we need to physically go out there and the clipboard or the tablet or something and just ask a few basic questions?
In fairness, this is a recurring question.
Oh yeah, it is, yeah.
Mr. King has explained how they've tried to put additional pressures on sections to respond to the consultation. But I'd like to answer.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there, and a really important point. It is really challenging to get people to respond. And we've talked a little bit before about comparators, where I don't want to say more simple surveys, but things that we know people feel strongly about. Community safety in the city centre would be a great example, where one still doesn't get lots and lots of responses. So we appreciate not everyone is interested in the the council budget, and some people are very interested. So that is a challenge to get people to respond to consultations generally. Not in Newport, everywhere, that's common. We do share practice with other places, and we have looked at budget simulations before. We tried something a few years ago, and we've looked at practice elsewhere where they've done something similar, and they don't work all that well. You don't really get the numbers and so on. And it is difficult to compare. If you take your example, which would be pertinent to a member of the public, I think, that Welsh language pressure is to meet the statutory requirement for translation. There's nothing extra in it. Already pushed down by the cost of procurement and all of those things. You know, the actual pressure was higher. We've done everything we can to bring it down with efficiencies and so there is something about that not being a real choice also, because we've got to be real about what we're asking for views on. But that said, we are always looking to improve practice, and we're always looking at others. In terms of having someone to kind of wander about the city, there's the resource implication of that, of course. What we try and do is go to places where there are already lots of people. So for every consultation. So if there are events, events in the city, a cost of living event or some other big or small event, we do try and go there and be there with a clipboard or boards and pegs or whatever that looks like. It still doesn't bring in very big numbers, but we do need to go to where people are, I think.
Right. Councillor Collins had a hand up for a while. Do you wish to come in now, or did you want to sum up at the end?
No.
I didn't.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Sorry, Matthew.
I didn't mean it. Fancy theatre closing it down in Killeen, Emma.
Yeah. That's a mistruth. That's fake news. I just wanted to come in just to add to what Tracy said, really, about different ways of consulting and about how we have made sure this year that the members have all had a toolkit, because we are 50 odd community leaders with a huge reach, and we talk about not enough people getting involved in the budget consultation and our desire to see more people get involved. So to you guys in the room, I don't know if you've used the toolkit, put it on your socials, shared it in the community groups you're in, and asked people to get involved. But I would actively encourage all members to do that. I've done it, and I know, we put it up and we're worried that we're going to get a backlash, but that's what we're here for. We're here to hear the views of the public, and so it's really important. So if you haven't had it, let me know and I'll forward it on, but everyone should have had it, and I'd encourage you to share it to make sure everyone can get involved before the consultation closes. Thanks, Chair. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
QR code that she sent out.
Question for you, Councillor Collins. Is that the QR code you sent out?
No, there's no QR codes. They are graphics that are plain text graphics that literally say, have your say on the budget consultation. Yes, and they came out last week. If you'd like me to, Chair, get them resent, I'm happy to do that.
It never hurts to resend them. But,
no worries, Tom.
Information that I received mine on Tuesday, 5 o'clock.
There you go. So if you could get if everyone shares it, there's still time for people to take part. That would be brilliant.
Okay, thank you, Cabinet Member. Mr. Cole.
Yeah, it's somebody who's been involved in these conversations with Scrutiny probably for 15 years. It's a challenge. My general, and it's interesting. He was online, and I've got very, very clear memories of him and I stood in the city centre on some events without clipboards, asking people to comment, and some of that stuff's really useful for intelligence. And we've run over the years a series of open events where people can come and talk to us about the budget. And what tends to happen, I've been in those where literally nobody's turned up, or 50 people have turned up, but where people tend to turn up is when there's a specific proposal. So, for instance, at the moment we're doing individual consultation events around the communities and library proposals, and large numbers are turning up to those to talk, because it's a real issue that people feel very strongly about. I think some of the other proposals. I think it's a challenge to get people because they can't see the direct impact. You know, council tax, whatever we do with council tax, we'll always get a response. Some of the other things, it's quite difficult for people to understand how actually it's going to impact on their lives and whether it will or not. Bear in mind, most of our funding and most of our services go on a minority of the population. Newport, it's either schools, and not everybody's got. It's a people in school have got children who have pupils in schools, or social services, which is a pretty small proportion. So actually, you know, what most of the public's generally interface with the council are things that they see when they leave their front door. It's, you know, it's street cleansing, it's refuse, it's community safety. So if there are things around that, people tend to respond. So I take on board the points. I think, you know, the more face-to-face things we can do, the more benefits. So either through members or officers where people can actually just talk to us. Maybe not just about specific things, but actually generally about, you know, what the council doing. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Can I just follow on, please, Mr. Chair? Obviously, I agree with you that you could get a much bigger reaction from people when it's something very specific. You know, because obviously we've got in Killeen at the moment, we've got quite people getting quite agitated about the prospect of losing a library and. But the point I was going to come to is that there seems a big disparity between the online consultation and the paper consultation, whereas the online one, I was quite pleased to see actually, was quite specific. There's a little section on Killeen and a little section on, you know, Rivermead or whatever. And so people can relate to that. And I think it really encourages them to take part. Whereas the written form that people get asked to fill is very, very general, isn't it? Now, I'm not sure I've got an answer to this, where you could have a written form for each area, I don't know, or obviously we don't think it's something that's about 30 pages long trying to get everything in one document. I really, it's a challenge, but I know just talking to people, when people looked at the form, that they you know, it's not inspired them, if you like, to get involved. Whereas if they go on the website and see, you know, Killeen Library or something quite specific they can relate to, that there is quite a difference. Then can I ask one other question as well, please? The ward events, am I correct in thinking that there's no sort of recording of the ward events, is there? There's no, the comments that people make actually at the ward events, do they or do they not become part of the consultation evidence? My understanding at the moment is that they don't. So in other words, what people have said at Killeen the other night.
So they're encouraged to commit that, and then everyone else.
I know they are, but it doesn't go beyond that.
They have to be at Killeen.
Yeah.
So everyone at Killeen had filled out, and they took questionnaires away. Not this was said in that way, because what we're doing at them, they are not consultation events on specific things, are they? If we take Killeen as an example, there's a meeting next week which is a consultation on those savings.
Yeah.
Whereas the ward meeting is actually a ward meeting, right, where we talk about savings, talk about police matters, we talk about everything. We're really promoting a response.
But the budget is on the agenda.
Budget consultation is on the agenda.
On the agenda.
Yes.
It just seems a shame when you have got a lot of people together that there can't be some means actually, that, you know, relate to feeding that. Just feeding in the sort of general feeling of the meeting into the process somehow. Because, for example, on the online consultation, there's a sort of box, isn't there, where you can just sort of write free text in there. You know, you're not nailing people down to something specific. And if that can be put in, I wonder why the comments people make at the meetings can't be put in as well.
But those stories are important, I think, and that's also part of the member. That is also, they're also talking to their ward members, so that's, you know, that there's something about that also, isn't it? That's where your views come in. Just on the paper versus the digital form, the form bits are the same, but it obviously works much better digitally because it takes you to, you can look at the saving here. There's some dependencies. If you want to talk about this, you can talk about this. It's harder to do that on paper without making it very, very long.
Yeah,
You're right. And therefore we really do try to get people to go online, but we accept the forms in however they can. Actually, I think we sort of
No, I will now because you. I think it's a really interesting point. So they award meetings, they award members meetings that officers come to 2 or a year for specific purposes. One's around performance and asking the auditor. This one is around the budget, and it's more of a this is the budget setting process. This is what a budget looks like. This is how you can do consultation rather than taking feedback, which is why it's so important to segregate that from a meeting with communities around a specific issue in the community around the budget setting, hence the separate one around, for instance, communities and languages. So they are, I take a board point, and maybe we'll have a think about that as a general, maybe get some flip chart cards out there to get some general feedback in future meetings. I would also say, and it's a bit of a plea, the more of that and the more written forms we have is more the resource requirement in order to input that into something actually we can make sense. So the online stuff is easier. We can do that through a writing system. But I take a board your point, but there's a rationale for the separation, I think, which is also
Personally, do we actually have a budget for consultation?
it's very small. It's part
consultation.
It's
Reducing the budget.
It's part of someone's job. It's not all of any one person's job. We've got a small budget for, I'm going to call it materials, that kind of thing. You know, print the forms, get we do prepaid envelopes or something. That type of thing. Yeah. That sort of.
Just for clarification for anybody who's viewing this this morning, we specifically talked about Killeen then, and they're getting the normal budget consultation meeting where ward members attend, and it's led by a senior officer. You did you?
Yeah.
And then we got another consultation specifically on the town hall and other aspects of, should we call it, service diminution within Killeen?
And
that will be led by
no, I've not put my hand up.
that would be led by a senior officer from the relevant department. Yeah.
Yeah, and just because I think we've talked a lot about, that was just an example, a lot about Killeen, a lot about that kind of language and stuff, right? But just be really, really clear. So what happens is the general consultation engagement process for the council, and board meetings are part of that, and it's more of a general thing. But also with service areas, Tracy's team then supports an expertise to this, but within service areas, when there are proposals that have a significant impact on service users or community, there's a requirement for them to some specific consultation on those things. And we've done that in a range of different ways over the years. And the one around community libraries, community centres and libraries, is only one of those that's happening at the moment. So there'll be some things within social services with service users that are being spoken to directly about the impact as well. But we have this general process and we have that, and that all feeds into the overall response. Okay,
Thank you. Hopefully that's clarified. Yeah. So we're on consultation on the budget. Any other questions?
Just one last question. When this, did you went into quite a bit of detail actually about all the efforts you're making to try and get a pitch. At the end of this round, is there actual formal sort of evaluation of how it went, the consultation?
Yeah, we consider this, this important meeting part of that, and we'll know. It's really tricky with numbers because What we know is certain consultations elicit a certain amount of interest. That doesn't make it more or less successful. Do you know what I mean?
I was thinking more. Go on, sorry.
We do learn lessons from every
I was
consultation.
thinking more of looking at, very, very small proportion of young people took part, or a very small proportion of this particular group took part. And
Yes.
if you look at
Yes,
that,
we look at the stats in that way, and we recognise the ongoing challenges there, which you've kind of alluded to. We also work with others across Wales, same thing, and we're looking at with Data Cymru, this was in last cabinet actually, about a resident survey in the summer, a resident survey that everyone in Wales will do about what's it like to live in Newport, and it'll be interesting to see if that gives us different results, lots of different methods, national piece, but we constantly try and learn lessons from and directly with lots of people who've worked with us on engagement anyway, people like the old Laura, the wrong terms, to get their feedback as well about what that looked like. What we do know is for those who engage in the, I'm going to call it the smaller survey, which just says about council tax and it says, are you going to respond to the survey? A lot of people say no. So they've engaged in it and then decided not to respond. But because, I was going to speculate then, because I think sometimes people think that's your job to do that. Because if you're not directly impacted by the savings, I think it is difficult. Whereas everyone's impacted by savings. That was a long answer. We really do learn lessons and happens every consultation.
Tracy might not appreciate about this, but in previous years, I think we've done it for the last couple of years, but in previous years, we've come back to committee that sort of analysis, and you've made recommendations based on what we've done in the previous year, because obviously we're in the midst of it, aren't we?
yeah.
So in previous years, we have done a kind of analysis of what's happened, and we've got what we've told us and what work that it did. So that might be something the committee can consider.
That's because this committee specifically asked for, in prior to the consultation, I think it's happened on 2 occasions. Sorry.
So there's one thing which came up, there's an email from the Environment Health Board, and launching a SMS feedback survey by text. So we've got a mobile number, and they're saying if you're sitting in the emergency department, we're going to send you a text survey there. I thought we'd ask that. So do people respond by text to things nowadays?
Be interested to see how that goes.
Yeah,
It's certainly something we could look at.
No, I know. Just seemed like that was 10 years ago. I wanted to do that, but I'm sending a text. Or even more worrying, actually, they say, oh, don't worry, if you're in the department waiting, you can just talk to member staff and they'll take down your, which would be complete. Anyway, so it just appeared on my house, and it's odd.
But we'll take a look at why are they doing that? That's something we could ask actually. Why have they decided to?
Okay, let's try and get the committee's wishes on this. So, yes, we like the feedback survey on consultation. So, do we want that to form a full agenda item on meeting in the autumn, or are we just content to receive the reports?
If we're thinking of information.
The sort of breakdown of who's responded and all that sort of thing. Because I say we've asked in previous years for a consultation, a pre-consultation meeting, so that we can make suggestions as to how the consultation should be conducted, which in fairness, I don't think that went very far, mostly because of lack of resources. We can come up with a lot of great ideas, but unless we can convince the cabinet to put a substantial amount of money to one side to enable it, we are just picking up with the report, really. So what do you want?
Is this change just on the, are we talking about just the consultation on the budget, because at the moment there are a number of consultations going on, aren't there? They're picking up one on playgrounds, for example, which is
not just the consultation on the budget. Because the other, if we ask for the other ones, they will go off to different committees. They won't come back to us. But go to places or people in places or whatever.
Would it be helpful if, so just thinking about what you just said, we could come back on how it went, what were the numbers, how purposeful was that with an information report? We can include what are the other consultations that have happened this year, not perhaps all the details, but there's a bit of context, because there are lots of consultations all of the time. So we've done that before, a list of everything. We have to put that in the council's annual report, so we need to do that anyway. Then if committee want more detail, you can kind of call that in after that, I guess.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
yeah, that's not very far off, but the help.
No.
Okay, those online, you okay with that?
If I could come back to you on timescales,
Yes.
because we need to be at the right point when all of the work is done to understand it.
Yeah.
You know, I did Samantha would chase me in 3 weeks' time, and that would be too soon.
No, no. You know, in the autumn, prior
Yeah.
to the next consultation round, you know. Yeah. As you say, you've got to do the work anyway, so it's just a matter of
Yeah.
sending it back to
Yeah,
us.
we do that alongside the annual.
Thank you, that'd be very helpful.
Are we giving you a recommendation now?
Well, at the end of this section, probably.
Are these all helpful to do
Well,
when we, at
this
the end
one-
of the section?
yeah.
At the end of the meeting, I forgot.
Just, you know, Samantha's got it down, but this is not a recommendation, this is a request.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think in our own right, we can ask for these reports rather than having to go to cabinet and decide if it's relevant.
Sure, it can be helpful. I can go through what I've noted already if there are no other questions. Was that which one?
Well, let's get to the end of these. Okay. As unconscious stakeholders, I'll leave it as this. Right. Excuse me. We're moving on to the draft minutes now of the performance scrutiny committee people. It's on page 29 of your pack. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it.
We were just noting these.
So, yeah, but if
Yeah.
you know, if you want to make
Noted.
a comment, can't do anything to change.
No.
No. And they've made some requests for more details. And reducing community centre charges. Okay. And no comments on that one. We're moving on to page 31, community place and corporates. And they've asked for a review of the community centres, including Killeen plus the cost. Okay. Any comments? No. Then we're looking at the performance scrutiny committee, place and corporates of Wednesday, the 22nd of January. That's it. If there are no further comments, can we draw that section to close?
So our recommendation sheet, that's fine.
Yeah.
So under the budget setting process, I've noted about getting a committee original response from Sylvia regarding the landfill. Under the consultation section, I've got the request for an information report on the analysis of this year's consultation and some information about other consultations in around autumn of next year, next 20 years, if you know what I mean. I've noted 3 recommendations. Councillor Evans' recommendation about offering alternatives in survey questions, such as would you rather see an increase in this, or are there any other suggestions you can make? I've got a recommendation about including area-specific questions in surveys or area-specific surveys that you know use to get the box, and a recommendation of using ward meetings for consultation feedback from the public.
Anything I've missed or anything the committee wanted to add or amend?
Can I just suggest that actually I thought it's helpful that we go out to consultation after Christmas rather than going out on the 18th of December or something like that. I think it should help people. Otherwise, it's a bit cynical saying, well, we got out. The Welsh Government did one on boundary changes, which went out on the 18th or 19th of December. It's like, well, and do we have a duty made aware that that final settlement might not be the final settlement to express concerns? And there's a question about the national insurance, having been told that, you know, they're not necessarily guaranteed. Do we have a duty as a committee to pass on our concerns to the cabinet should that not happen? It's a question. I know. Think a lot of the members think.
To be honest, I don't know what good it would do, and the cabinet.
No, it's just
if it can be told quick enough, we're not going to be fully funded.
But it's actually in the report, isn't it? It's in there.
It'll be in the report that there's a risk around that element. Most governments have told us that they will distribute it depending on what they get, and that's the issue. It's what will they get.
It's the committee can make a comment to cabinet around it if you so wish. It will be in the report, but you can make a comment about it.
Are you concerned?
Yeah, well, yes, I am. I'm concerned, but I thought the question we're being asked now is that this is an issue facing us during the budget process. Is it being addressed by? Is it being addressed? And it just seems to me, yes, it is, because we've had the finance tell us here that it's being addressed, and it's in the report to say it's being addressed. So. What else we can do?
It's being addressed.
It's being addressed in the sense that the risk is being highlighted.
Yes,
that's right.
If you wanted to address it, what you would do is that you wouldn't expect 100% of it. It might be prudent to expect 90%. You're just expecting it to be a little bit lower. That's the only thing that we could do. But at the moment, it's 100%, and we're just making sure that everybody's aware that that's an unavoidable issue.
But that's the point I was trying to make. It's already being considered as part of the plan.
And if we get 100%, fine. If we get 90%, it'll probably come from reserves. But if we get 0%, it'll be an emergency budget, I would imagine.
We'll face that issue then, Chair.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be that pessimistic.
I wouldn't go down with a zero.
Right. Yeah. Just before you go, Mr. Paul, I think there's only one on here in the Scrutiny Advisor's report, and this is the report back from the other councils. Good things.
I think, Chair, that one's been picked up by the Alan Mike.
Right, okay. So,
was that about the having that information report and what stage that captured? So at the minute, I haven't heard anything about it, but I will speak to Leanne about it. I was reading our last meeting about doing some sort of best practice comparison between other councils. Yeah, I will.
so it's not Mr. Cole was the responsibility.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, Reeve.
We've got to answer that sometime. But thank you very much for your attendance this morning, officers, and we go on to the Scrutiny Advisor's report now. And thank you, Councillor Corbyn.
Thank you.
If I just whiz through my sections of the budget, you can see as usual, we've got our 3 sections. We've got our forward work programme, which we're almost at the end of for this year. So our next meeting is the anti-poverty strategic plan. That's on the 7th of March. following the discussion in the pre-meeting, I will go and speak to the strategic of social services and just seek some assurances that that will definitely be coming to that meeting, and then I'll forward them on to committee.
So that we move to the 6th of March.
Yes, it's Friday, isn't it? So,
We're shut on Fridays.
Oh gosh, love it. So 6th of March, ignore me. I'll update that in our programme.
I did particularly ask Samantha to chase this one up because you can imagine as council's anti-poverty champion, I'm particularly interested in this strategic plan.
And it has been moved once already in this cycle of meetings. So I can understand wanting to seek some assurance. So I will do that. And then following that, it'll be our last meeting on the, I hope this is the right date, 25th of April, for the corporate safeguarding annual report. So 24th.
24th of April.
I'll update them after this meeting, so apologies for the typo.
That's all right.
So yeah, that's as it stands at the minute. Our actions monitoring sheet following that only has 2 actions, one of which is, as we've already discussed, the committee structure review, which I'll raise at the end today, and the copy of the tables from the previous corporate safeguarding annual report. As we are so close to that one, I wonder if the committee want to see, rather than have that before the meeting, if they just want to see that updated table in the news report and have that as a comparison.
Yeah, I think that's what the committee asked.
Yeah. No problem. I've made a note of that, and I'll speak to the head of safeguarding about that one. All of our outcomes, our recommendations, and the outcomes monitoring table have responses against them, and I've made a note about having some more information regarding the Newport matters recommendation we made. And as soon as I have that, I'll forward it on to committee as well. Any questions or anything, committee?
Can I just make one suggestion that we actually have dates by them? I think it'd be helpful. Some are obviously absolutely longer than others. So when the recommendation was made by us,
Okay, dates in the meeting. I'm ready.
yeah. So when it would just be helpful just to.
No problem.
And you're going to have a look at the recordings.
Yes, absolutely. I got that noted under our minutes section, Chair, about
Yeah.
the attainment, not attainment, exclusion data and technology data. I'll have a look at the recording and I'll speak to Reese about that then and say what I imagine. And I'll let you know as soon as I know something. That's everything from me, Chair.
Questions, additions? And remember, if you want a specific topic that does fall within our remit, you might want something that falls within one of the other committees, but if you think it belongs to all of you on scrutiny, please let us know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You happy with that, too? Happy to close the meeting?
I'm indeed happy to close the meeting. Thank you all for your contributions this morning.